Why others are being successful while you're playing mind games to showcase your dominance.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Morning, peeps. You thought I weren't coming, right? We're back with another episode. I took out of this ginormous stockpile of ideas that have meanwhile accumulated. And honestly, it's very hard to pick interesting episodes to produce if all of the topics are essentially interesting. So forgive me that in some regards they may seem random or the incoherent ramblings don't really produce like a long-term coherent contextual format. Wow, totally complicated words. This is about betas trying to be alphas and being so occupied with that that they actually lose sight of what's important in life. And I think, meanwhile, it should have kind of sunk in that pretty much everything is more important than the perception of you. You know, it's like a result world, not a who do you want to be world. And I'm going to start out basically by a fascinating experience you might have also witnessed. So many, many moons ago and a few lives ago, I was in vocational training, which is probably the same as a college degree. And I did this in finance with a local German insurance company. They invested quite a lot of money in giving us all sorts of trainings, assisting us in, being at the end of the day able to sell more insurance products. And one of these trainings kind of stuck, particularly. All of them were good. This one was fucking brilliant. They invited a guy who was coach / trainer / I have a life improvement ranch in Canada and train managers and that ordeal. This was the early 2000s it must have been, and the internet hadn't really developed that much that every frustrated person could kind of sell trainings to management. It's totally changed. Now you can spend all your wealth on improving yourself with every frustrated housewife that has had a change of heart and wants to become a trainer and influence people's lives and make them more successful, while in reality there are very few who actually make a difference. This person that I'm referencing actually did. In that, we were, as a group, I think we were north of 100 trainees at that time, all in a hotel that was owned by this insurance company, and totally unprepared for what was to come. And the guy was introduced by one of our supervisors, if you will, and he entered the room and boom, there was a presence that you felt. And this guy was totally fucking brilliant in telling stories and conveying what he was trying to tell you in a very picturesque way. And this dude wasn't anything special. He was maybe 1.80 meters, slightly overweight, but very slightly. What I call the wealth gut, eating too much good food, and frail hair, nothing out of the ordinary. But the presence he commended was just totally insane. And we sat down with him, pretty much one of my colleagues and I, we were the loudest of the entire group. And we're fascinated by this person. And looking back at it, I was like, why were you so fascinated by this person? And that's when I started my personal vendetta or journey into the human mind, in that I studied a lot of the available NLP material. Again, this was, not the internet that it is today. So it was quite hard to get my hands on information, and took hours of research, and cost quite a lot of money on books and additional material and so on and so forth. And that's inevitably when you get into the human mind, not in that way, but you start to study it, things come along which just really, really, really start to fascinate you, and how you can actually change your persona convincingly to be someone that you are, but it's a talent that's kind of hidden inside of you due to socialization. Okay, I'm going to let that sink in for a moment. We'll get back to that later. But I have two very interesting examples that I wanted to share with you, because more likely than not, you will have come across a person that I would like to call pseudo-dominant, or as I said in the introduction, kind of like a beta that wants to be an alpha. And these people are just insanely ridiculous in trying to commend the authority and so on and so forth. And to give you a very picturesque example, probably the more funny of the two was when I worked for a hotel group, and all of a sudden we got a new chief executive, and the first thing that he requested upon arrival was that everybody stood at the pier to welcome him with cheering and clapping and whatnot. And before his arrival, and after it was announced that he would be taking on the role of chief executive, the stories started to circulate. The hospitality business is quite communicative and chatty. And so all of these dark stories were coming up about how he was having the place where the massage therapists were living. He had that guarded because that was his personal hen house, as it was referred to as probably his personal whorehouse more than anything else. And this guy had issues, seriously. So he requested everybody stood there when he arrived. I had better things to do, which I think consisted of drinking tea. So I watched the entire thing go down from a safe distance. You never know what happens. And I didn't check the guy out, because all of the stories, all of the reputation that was kind of preceding him was making him a questionable character. But nonetheless, benefit of a doubt, I said, okay, I'm not going to do this welcoming thing. I'm just going to sit there and watch it from a distance. Long story short. So this, I don't know, little French person gets off the boat when he arrives at the resort that I was staying at as well. And he must have been in his early 50s at the time. And out steps after him, being the gentleman he is, his probably 25-year-old Indonesian wife, pregnant. And the gentleman that he is, he, gets his welcome claps and chants and drums and whatnot. All that was missing essentially was the fireworks. And then he just walks off, leaves his wife standing there to carry the suitcases. Now, that tells you nothing about his authority, but what a jerk he is, from a personality perspective, right? And the stories kind of went on, right? He was there was one occasion where we met for a board meeting, and he was just trying to entertain all of the financiers that were there, the bankers and whatnot, by kind of cutting people down. And it was just insanely ridiculous the way that he was kind of commanding respect. And he wasn't respected, he was feared. And there's a big difference, right? If you fear someone, it's not respect. It's something insanely perverted. And I didn't, because I was kind of tired of the job, because nothing progressed, nothing moved forward. And it was very difficult to kind of achieve the goals that we had kind of determined. And that was one of the reasons he came. Problem was, he was an idiot, and the whole project tanked because of that, because he knew everything better, and so on and so forth. Now, the pinnacle of his assholeness was when, I don't know, we were working together on and off for about 3 months, because I was reporting directly to him. And I asked him for information that I'd been running after for months. And he wrote me back an email, it was shortly before Christmas. And I said, look, are you going to deliver the information before Christmas? Or, because otherwise I would fly home to Europe to be with my family over Christmas. And, being the dick that he is, he writes back, Inshallah, which, for all of you who don't speak as much Arabic as I, that's probably my limit as well there. If so God wishes or wants or whatever. I go online, book a ticket, fly home to be with my family for Christmas. And on Christmas Eve, my family and I were sitting at the dinner table. He writes me an email, and he was one of the few people that I had on alert if they sent an email. So he deliberately waited till Christmas Eve of that, and waited until it was made sure it was dinner time in Europe. So it was way past his bedtime, at least. I don't know what he was doing with his girlfriend or wife, what it was perhaps at that time. And sent me an email saying termination of contract, yada, yada, yada. And that he wanted my reports, which I couldn't complete because his information was missing. But he knew that because I had already sent him a preliminary draft. Now, what's wrong with these people? I don't know, but one thing is for certain. This guy didn't have anyone's respect, not even that of the foreign staff that was working there from Southeast Asia. And these people are usually very respectful towards Westerners. But this guy was so ridiculous. Everybody's just in pure fear of getting sacked by him, because, that just happened. You wake up one morning, he doesn't even have the decency to, personally tell you, because he's too good for that, supposedly. And you would just get a text message saying, you're fired, pack your shit, get out of here. Your visa for your work visa has been canceled for today, so you better get the fuck out of here. Now, as funny as this is, and I thought it to be funny because, at the end of the day, I wasn't reliant on the project. I wasn't reliant on the money. It wasn't well paid, and so on and so forth. So for me, it was, I didn't fear him. I just didn't give a fuck. His character traits were, kind of amusing. His weakness was kind of the same. And what pissed me off, though, was that he was using his, well, not authority, well, power, or the whatever it was at the end of the day. I can't really find words for it. To have these people live in fear, and therefore do his bidding, which included his whorehouse, where everybody that didn't want to sleep with him kind of had to fear that they would be sacked the next day. And wow, it was just amazing how people misuse power. What you noticed was this person wasn't really dominant. It was a character flaw that he had more than anything else. And he was kind of living off this power, which I believe clearly shows if, you've got a wife of, Southeast Asian descent, and you're pretty wealthy because you scammed people out of a lot of money because you made them believe that you're good at what you do. That kind of gives you a signal, right? And an indicator of what type of personality that is. And that was my immediate thought. Long story short, what can I say about this person? It was totally fun. Kind of witnessing his behavior, witnessing her behavior, because she kind of caught on that he was whoring around and made a big scene. And I think it even made the newspapers. At least it made a bunch of Facebook groups of the country that I was staying in. It goes without saying that I think this person was kind of reading up on a lot of how am I dominant and how do I present my dominance and how do I make best use of it. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Second story, very similar kind of dude, although it was only the character traits that were similar, much less than the personal surrounding. He was a serial entrepreneur, and we were together on a project, and this dude had nothing better to do than, fly in once a week, piss everybody off with his attitude, and then fly out again and let the team, and we were already on a tight schedule, let the team fix it. Luckily enough, we had a fucking brilliant project manager there, who was there to do politics mainly, and to keep the client off our back so that we could work in peace. And he did his job quite well, including kind of picking up the foobar that this dude left whenever he would come in. Now, he was a project owner, obviously. But nonetheless, you don't come in, torpedo a project if it's yours, and then piss off again. But for him, you could also see that he kind of read up on all of his, how to improve your personality bullshit. And he's probably attended 2 or 3 dozen personality development trainings with all of these, pseudo get rich quick kind of scenarios. And it was just another very interesting person to work with. And he was, I think, at the beginning of his 30s. I must have been in my mid-30s by then. Yet, still, he tried to ridicule everybody to make himself stand out positively. And for me, again, it was, I couldn't care less because I was already for years at a stage where I was basically doing projects for fun rather than for money. And so I wasn't really afraid of him, but we did have people on the team that really relied on the project to succeed. And if you have somebody come in and, kicks over all the dominoes that you've been setting up for weeks, it's very frustrating and gets you into a mindset which is anything but a room for creativity and productivity. Long story short, how do you deal with such people? Now, again, I was always in a very beneficial situation where I didn't really rely on being able, or cooperating with these kind of people. But I was always around people who were. So for me, it was important to kind of calm the storm that these people create, calm everybody down, and motivate them to think that there is a life after this job or this project, right? And this was much easier with the second example I stated, because in the first example, there were a lot of people, like I said, from very poor countries who had landed this, for them, very important job. And their families back home were relying on the income that these people were producing. So, if that meant whoring themselves out or prostituting themselves at the end of the day, it was just that, but they had no other possibility. And in that situation, I really felt powerless because I wasn't in a position to, at the end of the day, I was in a position to get this guy sacked from the first example, through, it was kind of like a revenge play that I made. But at the end of the day, I couldn't help these poor girls and all the other staff. They had to submit to him because they had no other or little opportunities. So what I did was tell them to kind of look around for other jobs that were on other resorts that were very close by, just to get out of his reach. And that was very interesting. Some people took that advice and actually landed jobs because they had very good references from this employer, where this guy was chief executive of, simply because he wasn't able to undermine or to scare everyone into submission. There were some people like myself who weren't reliant on the job, and they made sure that these people got good references and were then safely brought over to their next employer. That being said, real people are secure and comfortable with their persona, with their personality, while only insecure people have to kind of present themselves in a light which they just aren't really in. And normally you can smell these kind of people 10 miles against the most fearsome storm, because they just carry this pungent stench of falseness and so on and so forth in front of them. Now, again, you have to be very careful because reputations precede people a lot. And when all of these stories of the first example started surfacing, I kind of took a step back and said, okay, look, we're going to, just let's see how this person is in real life. Because especially if you are in environments where, it's very chatty and people have a lot of time to discuss various insignificant topics with each other all day, a lot of stories start to surface which are just untrue. And in this case, it totally panned out. The reputation that was drawn of this person was absolutely accurate. In fact, it was even understated, as I found. And for the second example, it was very similar. Out of fun, we had a sociopath checklist in the team that we kind of checked off whenever this person flew in, and we monitored certain personality traits and just kind of tick the boxes whenever he would just fuck up again. And he was actually very good. I think he scored a 96 out of 100 in terms of this sociopath checklist. Anyhow, when I first met the person, both people actually, and this was free of any preceding reputation, I immediately knew that there was something wrong with them. So my gut is quite good at determining bullshitters like that. However, the team in the second example was very interesting, so I decided to go for the project, and the project content was insanely interesting. In fact, it triggered me so bad that I really was looking forward to doing the project. And I kind of ignored away the fact that my gut was telling me that this guy's a bullshitter. And for the first example, it was kind of like a similar situation. I just, sat back, kicked back the lounge chair, put on my seatbelts, and kind of watched what was going to happen. Long story short, these people had one thing in common. They didn't get shit done. In fact, I think in the second example, I already tried to give you a rough outline. This guy landed the project against all odds because before us, there were a lot of big consultancy firms there, and this guy was running, like a shoe shack kind of setup. And all of the big consulting firms that were there had already done the work we had been doing, where we were to do again. But they had also, they were also bidding for the same contract, and nonetheless, he was able to succeed, which makes it very difficult to comprehend how, on the other hand, you can then, fly in once a week and piss people off once you've landed the contract. Don't know where that personality trait comes from. It was, by the way, on this sociopath checklist. Now, what did they have in common? Sorry, I got off track again. It happens to me all the time. Both of them were so busy with kind of modeling their dominance they had on other people and the situation, and the control they presumably had on situations. And they were so busy that, on the other hand, they fucked everything up much more than anybody would that had a clear state of mind. And I think that's where I'm getting to. Protecting yourself from these people is insanely difficult. What you can do is you can, work yourself into a situation where you don't rely on these kind of people. So that you can, like I did, kick the chair up and kind of fasten your seatbelts and watch themselves destroy their work and themselves and their reputation at the end of the day. It's quite entertaining to do, so something highly recommended. However, there's no real way to protect yourself because, particularly with sociopaths, if you're sane, in the furthest sense, you're going to lose against these people pretty much every day because there's one big differentiator. You want to get shit done, and they're so busy with themselves and kind of feeding their ego that they destroy everything with the left hand that they have assembled with the right. So I think on the end note, I can only recommend watching somebody go into self-destruction. It's totally fun and totally entertaining. And yeah, hope this episode was entertaining to a degree as well. I'm trying to be more coherent because I got initial feedback that said that my ramblings were kind of out of line. Well, not out of line, but too long and not coherent. That's a new word I learned. So I'm swearing improvement in this and hope that you will tune in to the next episode. Until then, have a good day, have a good night, have a good morning, wherever the fuck you are. If you have feedback, like the other people did, write an email to theverybestpodcastintheworld@gmail.com. And I will try to answer all of your notes and do so quickly. Sometimes I don't, but I swear that I will improve. Okay. Stay safe. See you soon.